Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to join in these conversations. It really is a wonderful part of my work. I really enjoy it, and I just love to be part of this community. So thank you. And Linda, thank you for the tremendous effort and work that you do to keep this all going. So, I guess I'll start with a question here. Have you ever wondered how it is that at the time of an eclipse, at the time of a solar eclipse, the shadow of the moon exactly covers the sun? And at the time of a lunar eclipse, the shadow of the earth exactly covers the moon. I mean, how does this happen? Have you ever thought about this? How can this be? Um, don't look to me for any answers. I don't have the answer. The answer that I come up with is that this is the great mystery. But it's a phenomenon, and it has grabbed people on our planet, for millennia, since the ancients. They held these eclipses in great awe and great trepidation. They were full of fear, and they were full of astonishment when each of these things would happen. And I think to a great degree, we also feel this impact. So, why is it that eclipses are so impactful? Why do they affect us the way that they do? And I think is the second question that we need to ask. What we're looking at when these events occur is the combination of the sun, the moon, and the lunar nodes. Well, the sun is the source of all of the life force that comes into our solar system. It's responsible for all, not only the life on Earth, for everything that happens within our realm, whatever, our visible universe that we can see. Um, the moon takes that life force and distributes it. It's the flow, and it enables that energy to move through our I don't want to say more than our atmosphere, but through the time and space that we call our planet. And the lunar nodes are the karmic axis. I'm sure you've heard that many times here. They are our evolutionary trajectory from the past to the future. So clearly, when these three forces come together, there is going to be some dramatic, I don't know, consequences is the right word, but some impact. It's going to have an effect on the time and space that we call our planet Earth, and the space that we live in. This lunar eclipse that's going to occur on July 27th is going to be, I'm sure you've heard this, is the longest eclipse of the century. And, we've had Rose, who's just so remarkable, and we've got Gemini Brett coming up next week. So what I've really been working towards with this talk is to see what I can add, perhaps that's a little different, certainly give you my perspective on these things, but rather than just to repeat a lot of this stuff, I'm hoping to be able to add to the conversation in some way that will be meaningful, and not just, say the same things over again. But it is important to note that this is a long eclipse. Its totality is going to be an hour, 42 minutes and 57 seconds. That's just a remarkably long time for a total eclipse. And clearly, the time frame itself, the eclipse will actually lasting more than 4 hours, 3 hours, 55 minutes actually, is going to also add to the impact. It's going to add to the strength and the intensity of what's happening. The good news, bad news. The good news is that it's only going to be visible in the very southern part of our planet. Linda will get to see it, but in the northern hemisphere, North America, Europe, we will not see it. It will be visible in the most northeastern parts of Europe through Russia and the Baltic states, I believe. But because there is this understanding that the intensity of the eclipse, the effect of it as it moves over the Earth, is really a function of its visibility, to a great degree, some of the impact will be spared for us in the northern hemisphere, in the northern part of the planet. Um, and I also agree with Rose very much that, we working with a 2 or 3 degree orb here. So if the eclipse is, 10, 15 degrees from your sun, your moon, your Mercury, your chart ruler, some dominant planet in your chart, it's not necessarily gonna really land on it, but the house that it falls in certainly is going to feel the impact. Whatever is going to be realized from uh, your personal experience is going to be determined by where the moon is, where this Aquarius moon falls in your chart natally. Um, Clearly, if it's within 2 or 3 degrees, you're going to feel it a little bit more strongly. It happens that, uniquely, one of the reasons I chose to do this talk is my birthday is July 27th. And my solar return occurs 4 hours after the eclipse. And I'm kind of sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting for this one with bated breath. It's a big birthday for me. It's a milestone. So it's been kind of a dramatic. I can't separate one drama from the other with all that's happening. It's been a very interesting time. But clearly, it's something that we're all feeling. And I'm going to reference some of the events that are happening on our outer world as well as examples, so that we can look at this to see what this looks like. Eclipses come in cycles. We know that there's a metonic cycle and a saros cycle, and we're looking at 18, 19-year periodic cycles of these eclipses, these events. And this eclipse season relates back to the events of July 2000. Now, the circumstances of this eclipse this time are not going to be the same, but the process will be the same. So if you remember what was going on in your life at that time, the events that are occurring now, we're actually right in the midpoint of the solar and lunar. But the events that are occurring right now will in some way relate to what happened back in July of 2000. But like I said, the details will be different, but the process, whatever process you were going through in your life at that time, your progress moon was probably in a similar point. So I would say, no, excuse me, your progress moon would not be not in 18 years, but it might actually have been in opposition. So you can look at that chart, or you can just kind of gauge your memory a little bit, and it'll give you also some insights into perhaps what could be happening here. But just as a reference, in July of actually June of 2000, the national the Democratic and Republican conventions were held. And so we had George Bush chosen as the Republican nominee. We had Al Gore chosen as the Democratic nominee. And we kind of know how that worked out. By the end of that year, the election actually was decided by the Supreme Court, which was huge. And it actually was contested whether there was some legality. So there were some constitutional issues surrounding that election, and we could be facing that same kind of situation here in the States as the next couple of years unfold. It remains to be seen how this is all going to work out. A month before the eclipse, we had the breakup of Microsoft, which I thought was significant, and Bashar al-Assad succeeded his father, and we're still seeing the effects of that. That now that he is taken over Syria as president, we've seen what's happened, and we're deep in the throes of that succession, and maybe at the most difficult part of that development. Excuse me. So we can really get a handle on what we're seeing in terms of our own world and national events. And I think if we looked at Europe or we looked at Asia, we would find the same kinds of developments that would correlate to what's happening today. So this is the chart of the actual eclipse, and initially this was a 1-hour talk, and I had kind of restricted myself just to the major cycles, to squares, oppositions, and trines, in order to go through this, just to kind of simplify this. Certainly there's lots of sesqui-squares and inconjuncts and quintiles that are occurring here, but I've left them aside for the moment, just so that we can kind of zero in on the main points that are really occurring. And what I would like to do in the time that we have is break this down into this grand trine that we can see here, and this grand square, which is also forming for the eclipse, and kind of take a look at how this is unfolding. Anybody have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to ask or add before I move on? Okay. So here I've isolated just the squares and oppositions. And you can see that the lunation itself, the full moon itself, stands at two of the arms of this grand cross. And we have Uranus squaring the nodes on one side, and we have Jupiter squaring the nodes on the other. We also have Juno squaring the nodes, and I'm going to come back to that, because I want to talk at some point today about Juno and Athena as part of this mix as well, because both of them play very powerful roles. And as we kind of examine and elucidate their dynamics and how they're working, I think it may reveal some personal things and some collective things that are happening in our world that really relate to the power of what these two goddesses can bring to the meeting, so to speak. So these are all of the aspects to the moon itself. And, you know, the primary aspect that we have going on here is the conjunction to Mars retrograde in Aquarius, which has really been a very, very dynamic aspect and transit since its occurrence. Generally, we see, you know, maybe things will slow down or ease up in a retrograde, but there's no sign of any of that happening with this Mars in Aquarius. If anything, I think things are accelerating. And it has really turned up the heat. This is a heated up dynamic. This really is creating some friction, and we see where that friction is. That friction in the United States, clearly we are reeling from the recent Helsinki meeting between he whose name I hate to even mention, and Vladimir Putin. And it was just so erratic and so full of, you know, created such discord and dissonance, and had such blowback in our world that it was just astounding. You know, I have to ask myself, one of the questions I have about, you know, this eclipse cycle is, you know, how harsh can our world become? I mean, how much of this stuff can build up? You know, when do we reach a point where, you know, we say, you know, it just can't seem to get any worse? I have remedies for that, and we'll have another way of looking at it. But, you know, I don't even want to listen to the news anymore. It's gotten to the point where, you know, it's almost like Twilight Zone. It's just unreal. There's an unreal quality to it. And I understand it, and I will be, you know, be talking about how this is unfolding and why it's unfolding. But in the meantime, you know, my partner Susan says, yes, I get it, but why do we have to live through it? You know, it's so it's kind of where, you know, a lot of us are coming from. You know, why do we have to be experiencing all this horrible stuff in our world when, you know, we're all working so hard on ourselves, and we're all dreaming a different, more conscious future, and yet, you know, this is what we're realizing. So you know, this Aquarius energy is really at the core our time. It's been the ruler of it's been the ruler of the South Node for half a year now, and we still have another year down the road looking at it. You know, Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. Uranus is as a disruptor. It's an interrupter. You know, following the sign of Capricorn, where all the rules and regulations and mores and standards and all these ethics are, you know, literally set in stone, and you know, we kind of either, you know, abide by them or, you know, or else in some cases, you know, it's the consensus reality that we're all asked to participate in on to some degree. But Uranus comes along, you know, in the 11th house in Aquarius and says, no, you know, this isn't working. This doesn't work. But it's not, there's no gentle suggestion. This isn't a little nudge. This is, you know, like a kick in the butt sometimes. This is, you know, somebody sticks out their foot and just trips you up. But there's a reason for it. There's a meaning to it. And it's because, you know, in Capricorn and in you know, Saturn is just so crystallizing and so solidifying that there has to be a balancing dynamic that can ease things up and allow things to change and move along. And this is really the process of evolution itself. You know, we're here, we talk about evolution, but this is the process. And yes, we'd all love to, you know, believe that everything moves along slow, you know, smoothly, and we progress point to point, and everything is facilitated, and you know, we have money and love and friends and partnership and safety, and we don't, you know, all those things. But you know, this is a soul school. We're down here on Earth. I mean, this is, you know, this is in this time and space. This reality. Unfortunately, or fortunately, for better or for worse, is a perfectly imperfect world. And there has to be some mechanism by which we can experience all that is. We can experience everything that our soul needs in order for its own growth, and yet somehow keep moving along that lunar axis, that trajectory, that is taking us forward towards, you know, where our soul intends for us to go. And right now, Uranus is got the upper hand in this karmic axis, in terms of determining, you know, really what needs to change, and pushing us towards that Leo polarity, where we grow and self-actualize and reinvent ourselves in some new and different way. And so Mars is acting as a trigger, if you would. And, you know, Mars in Aquarius is not only conjunct the moon, but it's also squaring Uranus itself. So it's, you know, it's like a double whammy here, where we're getting it, you know, doubled up, if you would, or doubled down, I guess is the way to put it. So the intensity is remarkable, but it's understandable. And we have to recognize that we have agreed to this, you know, on some level. I mean, we've all agreed to be here at this time and to participate in some way in these events that are happening in our world, and even happening in our families and our neighborhoods as well. But you know, I guess this is, you know, maybe a cliche, but I always come back to the expression, we were never promised a smooth journey. We were only promised a safe landing. And I hold to that. I have tremendous faith in the future. And, you know, and I think most of us are aware, you know, we're moving towards the 2020s, and anybody who's studied any kind of astrology is aware of the stelliums, the conjunctions that are coming up, and these transits. And this is really what we're heading towards. And, you know, I think it's still a great unknown, because again, you know, I believe that we're dreaming it. Nothing is set in stone. There is no predictability in a sense. And I think that astrology is not necessarily best served as a prediction, you know, a predictive science, because we are conscious beings, and we are in a collective state of dreaming what the future will be. So we have to keep at it. you know, in my country, I would say if you know, people don't go out and vote, that's the way that they're dreaming their future. You know, if they go to the polls and they say, oh, well, there's nobody there I really like, and you know, this one doesn't really, you know, he doesn't really hold my values, and I didn't like her, and I, you know, we have to get past that stuff, because we have to recognize that unless we participate in our community in an active and, you know, proactive and positive way, that we're at the mercy of everybody else's dream, and we can't be assured that people are dreaming what we're dreaming. And again, I think that is part of this Leo Aquarius lunar axis that we're looking at, because we need to recognize that we're part of community, and that doesn't just mean that, you know, we you know, we're on the highway in a, you know, in traffic, you know, going to work in the morning. Yes, that's a part of community. It means that we're out there and we're part of what's going on. We're active in it. We're taking part. We're participating. This is a participatory world. But the events that are occurring is what is waking people up, which is another Uranian dynamic. It is an awakening, and sometimes you know, it's a shock to be, you know, to wake up. I had some acupuncture the other day, and I kind of, you know, went into some, you know, other place, you know, during the treatment, and when I woke up, I didn't know where I was. And there was something about that was both unsettling and remarkable, because, you know, it's when we don't know that we can, you know, have some new understanding. You know, so we'll come back to that. We talk about Jupiter, about, you know, identifying things with labels and meaning. I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit. And excuse me for my rambling. I'm trying to fill up this time as best as I can, so hope everybody will work with me. And any interruptions you might have are actually welcome. So feel free to participate if you have something to add. So let me just look at my notes here. Mars is also at its closest proximity to Earth at the moment. And again, this is adding to the intensity of this particular eclipse. It is also standing in full opposition to the sun. The day before the eclipse, it's actually, no, I think it's 2 days later. I'll have to look at my notes here. It's in full opposition, so it's fully illuminated. And so things are firing up, things are heating up, and we can, you know, we can expect for at least the next 6 months for this to continue. I don't anticipate any lessening of the pressures that we have upon us, because they're necessary. We need these pressures. I think we would all agree, especially in our you know, type of metaphysical circle, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the world. And so this is how it's happening. And, you know, we've intended the changes. So we are seeing the impetus and the stimuli that will facilitate those changes that we have all intended. And I think that by the time the next election comes around, whether it's the midterm election next year or it's the presidential election in 2020, those who voted for you know who may really have changed their minds about what their choices were, and those who didn't vote at all, I think, I'm hoping, dreaming, will also have changed their intentions and changed the way that they see things. And this is what it's meant to do. Just to kind of look at this, you can see these are the aspects just for the moon itself. And you can see that there is a square to Uranus, and it's a square to Juno, trine to Sedna, and clearly the opposition to the sun and the North Node, and also the square to Jupiter. I'll address these squares as we get to the individual planets themselves. But you can see that that clearly there's a T-square that Jupiter, Uranus, and the moon have formed, which is a powerful dynamic all by itself. So Uranus and Jupiter are no longer in opposition. They were in opposition for quite a long period of time. But by phase, they're still in opposition by sign. So, we can expect issues of, security and resources, and clearly the moon, we're talking about vulnerability here. The moon is, Jason Holly loves to, when he talks about the moon, he says our moon is full of craters. And, when we encounter other people, what we're encountering, really we relate moon to moon, but what we're encountering are their craters, and they're encountering our craters. So what we're seeing now are all the karmic PTSD that we all carry with us in one degree or another. And maybe some of it's from, a long time ago, or some's from our childhood, but we all carry these craters. And so, Uranus and Jupiter, on an individual level, are really going to expose that stuff. We really can't resolve squares and oppositions by ourselves. If we have a T-square in our chart, if we have an opposition, if we have a strong square, we're really not aware of it. It's especially if it's the moon or our sign. It's instinctive in a way, and it's below the surface. We're not really aware that we're expressing ourselves in that particular way. It's when we're in relationship with somebody else or in circumstances that stuff shows up, and that's where these crises and tensions occur. So, on one hand, what we're seeing is the effect of this in our outer world, again, which is acting almost as a relationship. It's our relationship to the world around us. And we're all kind of feeling this vulnerability and this lack of safety and this need for, that everything we have taken for granted in terms of our security and what we've counted on to be safe, just is vanishing, is evaporating. And so this is something we're all dealing with. And that's part of what this T-square is about. It's about the truth, and it's about, this reinvention in the world. And anybody have a question or anything about the moon or anything that I'm not clear?
Daniel,
Yes.
It's about 7 days till the lunar eclipse takes effect.
Yes.
They sometimes say that the full effect of an eclipse is 6 months before, 6 months after, or the events take place 6 months before and 6 months after. What about the week before?
Well, astrological timing is such a nebulous thing. I don't know that I hold hard and fast to necessarily any length of time. I think to a great degree, it's going to, on an individual, personal level, it's going to affect how close that eclipse is to one of our personal planets. I think 6 months is a little bit long, personally. I think a month on either side is where we really begin to feel it. It may be in a development or, seed stage earlier than that, but I think that we have been feeling this since sometime in June. And clearly we're going to it may not even impact us. Somebody may not even feel the circumstance may not even unfold for two weeks till after the eclipse. But yes, I agree that the effect of it will carry through until the next eclipse next season, which will be in 6 months, next winter. I agree with that part.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's personal, and I think it also it's a moving target. Just my opinion. Daniel,
it's affecting me personally because it's over my IC-MC.
Mm-hmm.
The moon and the south node will be on my IC, and the north node and the sun will be on my MC.
Okay.
And
how many degrees off?
That was my question. What orb would you use? It's 2 degrees off for me, and because I'm in Australia and the eclipse is going to be visible in Australia, it's going to be affecting me and also our Zoom meetings, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say a 2-degree orb is quite, yes, is definitely relevant and going to be impactful. I kind of feel bad up to 5 degrees, but the closer it is, the more impact. I think 5 degrees is the outer limit, if you would. Certainly 2 or 3 degrees, there's going to be we're going to feel it directly.
Thanks, Daniel.
You're welcome. It's a good question. Very good question. So obviously it's a full moon. So we have the sun opposite the moon here, the sun in Leo conjunct the North Node, and also again squaring Uranus, squaring Jupiter. Sun in Leo, as I said, Leo, this is our life force. This is our self-actualizing energy. This is how we project ourselves in the world, and to a great degree, it's there's also vulnerability here because this is both the sun and moon are ego, if you would. The moon is our ego because it's how we see ourselves. It's our self-image. It's how we perceive who we are. But the sun is the ego that everybody else sees to some degree. It's what we project out there as to, it kind of goes through a modulating, it's almost as if we have an internal transistor, like, that changes the frequency somehow and changes it from sun to moon inside of ourselves. So we take that self-image, however we have perceived ourselves, however we have interpreted who we are, and that becomes, again, I think it's more subconscious than we're not aware that we do it, but this becomes who we are in the world. It becomes our projection, if you would. It becomes how we put ourselves out there. And the sun in this chart is really under some pressure because it's being squared by Uranus, so it's really being shaken up. Sun and Uranus, in essence, are opposites because they are the rulers of the polarity in which they both exist. So I kind of correlate Uranus as our solar identity in community. It's, if you would, it's how we are in community, as an individual. But it's a how do I explain this? It's a modification or maybe a different octave, maybe is a better way to put it, of that individual persona. It's not our singular persona, it becomes our collective persona. And it also becomes, how we are participating in the group. Our sun doesn't have to have a group. Our sun can be all by itself and be very, isolationist, doesn't have to participate, can, basically go through life, as a singularity. But what we're talking about, is a singularity and coherence here. Again, sun and, it's like kind of like day and night, if you would. During the day, there's only one star in the sky, and that star is our sun, and it's, uber important. And we feel very identified with it. We feel very identified with our own sun, who we are. Can become narcissistic in its shadow, can become, self-centered, all those things. We know all the shadow side of Leo. But at night, the sky is filled with stars. There's a multiplicity about it. So we move from singularity to multiplicity, and I see Aquarius as that, as that collective multiplicity, where we are no longer alone, and we recognize, on some level, that we are part of a greater whole than ourselves. And this really opens the door for that soul growth, because we recognize that there is some direction that we need to be going, that we've in essence only gotten to first base when we move through that fifth house, where we're still developing. We're not fully developed. That makes any sense, but it's kind of the way that I look at it. This is a fixed cross, and fixed crosses are especially difficult because they are fixed, because they are so set in stone, so to speak. It's an immovable energy. So the remedies, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but what we need here is mutability. We need to find the cardinal energy and the mutable energy in our own charts and maximize that. We need to see where we can take some initiative, and where we recognize proactively that something has to change, rather than just kind of say, okay, this is the way it is, and I have to just bear with it, because we don't. We really do have to recognize and find that awareness that we can make the changes on our own, without having to have some cataclysm or somebody else come along and help us. So again, we're seeing this tension between what we think we need to survive. Jupiter in Scorpio, where again, where's the truth? Where are my beliefs? What have I believed? How has this helped me become who I am? Because we live according to what we believe. Those beliefs really become the final determinant of the choices that we make. They become our, we hand it off to Venus as our priorities. Venus hands it off to Mars as our behavior, as the action that we take. So what we believe really determines who we are and who we are becoming. And this fixed cross is telling us that who we are becoming is not necessarily who we need or want to be. That we have two. I think we have two crises, two crises in consciousness and two crises in action here. The way that this is playing out. So we're asking ourselves, what is it that I'm doing? How am I acting? It's a Mars dynamic. What are the choices, Mars, that I have made that have led to this situation that I am now finding to be so difficult, so troublesome, so really topsy-turvy, if you would. And how can I make different choices? That's really at the heart of this Mars retrograde. We are being forced to go back and look at what we've done. This may sound like a harsh analogy, but I don't know if you've ever had a puppy, and you try and train that puppy, and you put newspaper down all over the house, and you come home from work or wherever you've been, and you come home, and there's poop everywhere but on that newspaper. And so, you put that puppy's, nose in the poop. It's not a pleasant thing, but this is kind of what's happening to us. We're getting our nose pushed in our poop. We're being shown where we have not used the newspaper, where we haven't used the protocols that were set up for us or that are available for us to really navigate this reality that we were born into, or that we have chosen to be in. I hope that makes some sense, so without being too scatological. Let me just look at my notes here for a second. Mars opposite the sun as well. I mean, Mars is the leading edge. We know from EA that there is a core relationship between Mars and Pluto. And Pluto is our deepest unconscious soul desires. It's really what our game plan, if you would, what we have set up that is displayed through our karmic axis, through that lunar axis trajectory of where we've intended to go. And Pluto says how high, Pluto says jump, and Mars says how high, is really how this works. So, we make these choices based on where our soul intentions are going, but we have a subjective ego and a soul ego, And for most of us, there is a dissonance, there's a discordant relationship between our subjective ego and our soul ego. And we're making choices and decisions in our, day-to-day time frame, based on what we think is important, what we need to survive, what we desire. It may be nothing more than, what we eat during the day, or, who we hang out with. But are those choices of our friends, of our diet, our lifestyle, are they really in compliance? Are they really compatible with our soul on a soul level of where we've really intended to go? And that's where the angst and the neurosis really develops, and it can become psychosis, I suppose. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but this is where the shadow really deepens, really darkens, when we keep making those wrong choices. And, I hate to be, impose, these ethical kinds of judgments on it. I have to find some word to use, but when we make these choices that are really out of step, if you would, with really what we know we should do, because we all have within us an inner guidance system. The moon is that inner guidance system. It's our gut. Our gut instinct will always, tell us where we need to be going, where we need to be headed. But we listen to our head. We have, two intelligent organs. We have our brain and our heart, and our gut, to me, is related to the heart. Our brain will analyze and most often paralyze. I have to stay in this job because I have a car payment, I have a mortgage, I have a partner, and he or she expects me to share in our expenses, etc. We have these responsibilities and these necessities that we've taken on, and they become the motivating factor, right? So we're going to choose to stay in that job even when we know that it stopped working 2 years ago. Our boss is an a-hole. We're not getting the raises, all these things, but we stay there because it's familiar. It's again, it's a lunar thing. It's a familiar place of safety. But along comes Uranus, and it just begins to kick our butt. And we realize that we have to make some changes. And Pluto obviously also does that. That's really a Pluto dynamic. And ultimately, the rug just gets pulled out from under us, and we don't have the job anymore. We get a new boss, and whatever, he's clean slate, and we're out on the street. So we really have to follow our gut. We have to follow our instincts, in a sense. We have to listen to our heart, because that's going to take us forward towards that North Node. The North Node, just to digress a moment, I call the North Node a magical moving sidewalk. It's like that pathway. You go to the airport and you've got, you've still got your carry-on, and you've got your lunch, and you got your water bottle, and maybe you actually didn't even check your luggage. You're either carrying it or rolling it, but you're laden down with all this baggage. And you get to the airport, and you go through all the security, interesting word, and you go down towards the gate, and you get onto the pathway, the moving sidewalk that takes you out to the gate. Well, that's kind of like the way the North Node is working. It's this point that is facilitated in our chart that we have chosen, in the Bardo prior to this lifetime, set up for ourselves. This is your game plan. This is all set. You work with this, and everything is going to be fine. But we were born, and we don't really remember that anymore. But it's there, and it is kind of like it's like the doorway in the back of the armoire in the Narnia stories. You open it up, and there's another whole realm that exists there. We take one step towards it, and takes 2 steps towards us. But we have to be proactive with it. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be working. We're going to be drawn to it by default, even if we don't realize it. But it's how we respond to it, and start to work with it when those opportunities show up, or even if we're lucky enough to fall into it and just step into it. we still have to take responsibility, and we have to be be aware. We have to be conscious, and actually make it real. We have to do the Pluto thing, the Scorpio thing. We really have to commit to it, and meld with it, and osmose with it, and make it our own, and develop it. It needs to be developed. So this is, again, this is the dynamic, and we have Uranus and Jupiter pushing us towards that with these squares. They're demanding that we pay attention. They're demanding that we wake up. They're demanding that we recognize our own truth. They're demanding where we need to have commitments, and they're demanding where we need to recognize what's really important, where our survival really is going to be facilitated in the long run.
Daniel, I have a question.
Sure.
I noticed that Chiron in Aries, there's at 2 degrees, it's retrograde, making a trine with the sun in Leo, but it's also making a sextile with that stellium in Aquarius with the south node moon and Mars. I was wondering if you had any insights about that, what that could mean given the circumstances?
Yeah, well, Chiron is our friend. Chiron is an amazing archetype, because it has such a broad range of ways that we can work with it. For one thing, Chiron is about healing, and symptoms are an attempt to heal. So when we have a Chiron transit, we may feel a rewounding, we may feel circumstances that come up, in a positive way, to heal something that we haven't been able to heal before. So the trine to Sun from Chiron, and its retrograde in Aries is clearly about healing ourselves. Aries is the self. And so it's clearly about taking self-responsibility for our own healing, our own health, our own well-being. But it's also about mentoring, and it's also about being mentored. So it's, I see this also as an opportunity where either circumstances are going to teach us something, or an actual teacher can show up. And I think that the square from Jupiter and Scorpio also can be an indication to that. It's an opportunity to heal, and I think it ties in entirely with what I've been saying, where we are being healed. Our planet is being healed. Again, and this is a huge digression, but I am total believer in climate change. I don't know that we are totally responsible for all of it, but clearly the solar activity and what's been happening geologically and with the weather, there's clearly something going on, and it is the planet healing itself. And I believe that the Earth itself is the greatest healer of all. We are also we are great healers. We can heal ourselves of anything. We just don't believe it. We don't know it. I would go so far as to say that in a different mental time frame, in a different dimension, we could grow another arm, or heal an arm that's missing. And I know that that's a reach. But there is, I don't see any limitation on the consciousness that we possess, that we have tremendous capacity, we have tremendous potentials, we have potentials we're not even aware of. But because of the Saturnian, Capricornian consensus world that we have agreed to land in, we don't know it, we don't believe it. But I think a great example of it are people with multiple personalities, people who have healed themselves of cancer intentionally. There are many examples of this, in our world and through history, but it's not mainstream. And so just to get back to it, Chiron is opening that channel for us to find the healing modality that we need, whatever it happens to be. If it's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, the help is there. This is a helper, and this is a facility to move through this space and come through it holistically. not fractured. We are fractured is the problem. Our society is fractured. Most of us are fractured. I don't include myself in that group, and none of us are whole. We have all these different parts, and yes, I'd say to a great degree that the people who come through the doorways to this arena, are people who are whole in a lot of ways, who are what's the word I'm looking for? But we all have parts of ourselves that we've compartmentalized off. We all have wounds that we've buried. We have the craters in our moon. We all have craters, and Chiron is the ability to heal those craters and to find the modality for it, and it will show up. But we have to recognize it. First of all, we have to want it. We have to have the intention that the help can come to us. We can't be helped unless nobody can help us unless we want to be helped, and that's a huge hurdle in itself. A lot of people hold on to their debilities because it's their sense of who they are. And I'm sure we all know people like that, people with illnesses, and that illness is their raison d'etre. Their whole reason for being is their sickness. So, we have to recognize that help is out there, but we have to ask for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Thank you for that.
Yep. Great question. Thank you. Thank you. And anybody else before I move on?
Daniel, I had a question. How do you, and I'm not really even sure how to ask this. First, let me ask, is this particular eclipse here, you mentioned July of 2000. Was this around the same time?
It was on July 16th of 2000.
Wow. Okay. Was it at the same four-ish degree?
I don't think it was. I don't have that in front of me, but I don't think it was. No.
Oh, okay. Okay. My second question is, because the reason I asked that was a real pivotal, very, very pivotal time for me. It's 18 years ago to that day. That was the day I moved in to my home that I currently live in.
Okay.
And I looked it up, and it looks like there was an eclipse, but it was at the beginning of July, and it said it was in Cancer. So that was the reason for that question. And the other thing that I'm looking at is, how do you relate this to, or does the eclipse relate to one's own nodal axis?
Absolutely. Oh, sure. Sure. I know Wanda, because I know that you are a phenomenal EA student. You know that the transiting lunar nodes always refer back to the natal. Okay. So it's not like all of a sudden you have a new karmic axis. It's the current transit, if you would, or it's the current dynamic that is opening, in your life, but it refers back to whatever that natal trajectory is. Does that make sense? So, for instance, my nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio. My south node's in Scorpio, my north node's in Taurus. The nodes right now are squaring that in Leo and Aquarius. So it's definitely causing, some stress or tension in terms of my own in terms of my own life and where I'm going. I can feel this this shift in what it is, how I'm dreaming my next year, my next 2-3 years. That I've noticed that something has changed within me, that whether it's where I'm living or not what I'm doing, because I love this work, but I'm recognizing that some kind of change is occurring. And it's not really clear for me yet, Wanda, exactly what it is. Actually, in my case, I have my Jupiter return coming up next year. and my Jupiter's in Sag in my 4th house. Every time I've had my Jupiter return, I've had a residential change every 12 years. So I'm kind of anticipating that, you know, I'm going somewhere. I just don't know where it is. I'm kind of like just out there. You know what I'm saying? I've got my sensors out, but I sense the change. I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet.
Thank you so much for that, because I share the same nodal axis as you do. That, you know, South Node in Scorpio and Taurus North Node, but mine is at the pretty much the end. So I've got a while before, you know, Uranus will affect that. But the hairs just stood up on my arm when you said that, because I'm sort of feeling that limbo, you know, the same thing. And then when you pointed out that this relates back to the July 2000 eclipse, well, like I said, that's when I moved into this house. So it's like, whoa. You know?
The eclipse that occurred in early July in 2000 was the correlation to the solar eclipse that we had last week. So this would be the lunar eclipse. This of the 16th. So look at both of those dates, because they're related to each other. They're not, you know, they're independent, but they're connected.
Daniel and Wanda, the July 1st, 2000 solar eclipse was at 10 degrees Cancer, Cancer, 10 degrees
Okay.
Cancer.
Okay.
And the lunar eclipse on July 16, 2000 was at 24 Cancer, Capricorn. So,
Okay.
Wanda, do you have any planets around 24 Cancer, Capricorn?
Yeah, and that's the weird part, because I have nothing in Cancer, nothing in Capricorn.
What about 10? Oh, right. Okay.
What
But my
house
sun
was
is at 10 Aries.
what house was that, Wanda, that it fell in?
11th and the 5th house. Cancer is my 11th house, and Capricorn is my 5th house.
Oh.
Yeah, that's so it seems like the squares, because the one that was at 10 Cancer, that would be square my sun, which is at 1144 Aries.
What's the sign on your 4th house?
Sagittarius.
Sag, Jupiter. Was it aspecting your Jupiter?
No, my Jupiter is in the second one would have been, but it would have been a semi-sextile, because my Jupiter is in Gemini, 24 Gemini.
Could have been a progression.
Could be. Now I'd have to look that up. But that is just so, you know, so weird, because like I said, I have no planets in Cancer or Capricorn, but yet, you know, moving into, you know, your house is, you know, huge.
Where's your moon?
In the 12th.
In
Leo at 22. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to, you know, kind of obliquely, you know, come into a chart and you know, understand what that transit was about. But it'll be, you know, a good project, you know, something good for you to work on, to find that thread, because we know it's there, and I think you'll find what the connection was. It has to be there.
Wanda, if you like, we can put later on. We can put your chart up and see if we can find the reasons why.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Sure. Okay. So here we're looking at the Jupiter leg, and again, you know, we've got this T-square going on with Jupiter, Sun, North Node, Moon, South Node, and Mars, and to a great degree, you know, here we're looking at, you know, a lot of what's happening in the world. You know, we hear the phrase fake news. What comes to mind for me with this Scorpio, you know, is there's, you know, the power struggles. They're just, you know, it's the need to control for whatever reason. But primarily, what this comes down to is that we are being tasked with the need to really ask, what is it? What do we really believe? And when I say that, it's not just do we believe what we hear on the news, but what are the beliefs that we're holding on to that we're not aware of that are really driving us subconsciously, that are, below, under the hood, that we're not seeing. And again, I mean, it takes a great deal of, introspection, meditation, therapy, whatever, to, begin to sort it out. Mostly what it takes is our interaction with other people, I think, again, with these squares and oppositions, to really see it, because it's going to be reflected outside of us. It's going to be easier to see it in a relationship or in a set of circumstances than it is to see it within ourselves. And so if we can allow ourselves to, let our intuition really work with the feedback that we're getting, from our outer world from time to time, I think we can begin to, get a picture of what it is that where we need to go. Again, we're in a soul school. We have to recognize that we're here to do the work. And so we have written the lesson plan, or our higher self wrote that lesson plan for us, but we have to find it. We have to, we have to, what am I trying to say here? We have to make our own copy. We have to have, some working notes. And we get that notes through observation and correlation of ourselves. It's kind of like, reading somebody else's chart. We don't really know how that chart is going to work until, they begin to talk to us about the context of their life. And it's the same way with ourselves. If we really want to understand our own life, our own, what's happening to us, we have to find that objectivity, and to be able to see, and unfortunately, it's being able to take responsibility for our fuck ups, for our mistakes, and not dwell on them and not beat ourselves up over them, but to recognize, okay, this happened. Why did this happen? What was it, about that situation that triggered this event? And, if we can be honest with ourselves, and it takes a long time to do it. I mean, we don't do it when we're 14 years old. So, and unfortunately, it takes the circumstances to repeat over and over and over again until we finally begin to get it. And I think that's one of the things that Saturn does for us. I think Saturn is our friend. Time is our friend, because we all of us have these revolving or recurring cycles of things that happen to us. And the first time it happens, it knocks us down, and the second time it happens, it knocks us down, and we get up. And the third time it happens, we begin to see it before it knocks us down, and we say, this looks familiar, and hopefully we kind of change our choices and avoid getting knocked down. But it may take 3 or 4 times to do it. But we all go through this, and this is the process, and this is what these squares and oppositions do for us. And we're here to learn. I mean, and it's all okay. We have to forgive ourselves, and we have to forgive the perp, if you would, who did it to us, because they were simply fulfilling our own karma for whatever reason. So we created it, we dreamed it, and it's all good. It really is all good. So I think this is what the Jupiter and Scorpio is doing, because Jupiter is kind of acting as Pluto's agent, in a way, of forcing us intellectually and forcing us experientially, because Jupiter is an experiential planet. Jupiter isn't just abstract. It's not Neptune. It's hands-on. It's, I want to get out there. I'm going to climb that mountain. I'm going to hike that trail, whatever it is. And so it's the experience itself that teaches us. But we have to allow ourselves the experience, and we have to embrace the experiences when we find ourselves in the midst of them, whether they are, happy, wonderful experiences or challenging experiences. And you know what Jeff Green used to say, it's the squares that, that move us. It's not the trines. We cannot miss a square or an opposition. It's gonna get us up, up and moving. The trines are gonna, we're gonna just stay on the couch and keep watching Netflix. We're real comfortable here. Is there any more popcorn? We just want to be comfortable. We have to proactively go out to meet the trine. The trine is kind of like our North Node in a sense. It's this facilitated opportunity that exists, but we have to go out to meet it. Trines can actually pass unnoticed. Squares will never pass unnoticed. If we have a square, especially an outer planet to a personal planet, we're going to feel it. We're going to know it, and we're not going to be able to avoid it. And if we do avoid it, it's like that Verizon commercial. Do you hear me now? We're going to keep getting those experiences until we get it, until we finally, turn it around. So, but the good news is that we're going to get all the chances that we need. We're going to go there. We're going to end up where we intended to go. It's just going to, how many lifetimes is this going to take? How many times in this lifetime do I have to, have that experience until I finally begin to figure it out? And it's about our beliefs. It's about what we believe, because we follow those beliefs like a puppy dog. We don't even know we're doing it. It's just what we do. And what we're encountering, a lot of the dissonance and the conflict that we're, clearly in the world today, is this conflict, this crisis of belief, where, the red states, the blue states, and the left and the right, and the progressives and the conservatives, we're coming head to head. There's very little middle ground anymore. There's no man's land. You're either on one side or the other. And if hopefully we'll have time. I'm actually doing pretty well here, filling up this time. I want to get to Athena and Juno, because they're really, really active in this chart, and they really have to do with some of these issues.
Daniel, would you like us to have a break for 15 minutes? We can come back.
I don't need it. If you feel we should, we can. But I can keep going, because I'm not even halfway through here. I got a lot more. But
plenty of time. We do need a break at some point, so you just let me know when to have the break.
Let's do it right now, and then we'll keep going.
All right, just pausing the recording now.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody, from the break. We had some questions during the break, and I'm going to recap some of those questions or some of the things we talked about. The other major thing that's happening here, and let me go back a screen, is that we have two very active dynamics that are occurring really throughout all three of these eclipses, and really it's a core dynamic of this moment that we're passing through celestially, of both Juno and Pallas Athena, two very powerful goddess dynamics. Both of them, from my perspective, from where I sit, both of them really are about the return of the matriarchy and the return of the goddess. And I think that that's a huge part of what's happening. We're seeing the patriarchy come to its final expression, its fullest final expression. There's no question that Donald Trump is the patriarchy and the consensus reality played out to the hilt. We live especially here in the States, we live in a very materialistic world. It's all about material. It's all about, how much money you have, what kind of car you drive, where you live, what your status is. It's all about material status. That's the name of the game. Well, guess what? He won. I mean, he won the game. We have been dreaming this for 250 years, since 1776. We had slaves. We had, all the robber barons. And American history is just loaded with all the precursors of everything that we're experiencing right now. Most of us in our generation, especially those of us born since the end of World War II, or later even, we're living in a bubble. we grew up, you know, personally, our Pluto and Leo generation, we grew up in a time where there was all these progressive advances and things happening. Well, in terms of the history of the United States, it's a huge anomaly. It just wasn't always like this. We have fought tooth and nail for equality, racial equality, gender equality, economic equality. It has been an uphill battle since 1776. Most people don't realize that in 1776, there were 500,000 slaves, Negro slaves in America. Jefferson had slaves. It was just taken for granted that you had slaves. It's just the way that it was. It was part of our culture. It was part of our economy. You couldn't have an agricultural economy in the South based on growing cotton without slaves. So it's inherent in who we are and who we become. And yes, we had the Brown versus Board of Ed in the 1960s, but it took almost 200 years for that to happen, and we're still struggling with it, okay? This is what most people really don't see because we never experienced it. Some of us have. Some of us grew up in neighborhoods where we saw, you know, all the segregation, and we saw the racism, whether it was religious or cultural or racial. So what's happening now is it's all showing up. We are. This is like the you know, it's like the third act where all of the pieces are being, you know, brought back together. All the strings of the story are coming up to be resolved. The plot is looking for resolution. The symptoms are the attempt to heal, and so we're being healed of all this stuff. But it's a very painful experience because we're having all this rewounding. We're having to live through all of the shadow of human nature that has really been hidden, swept under the rug, been denied, dismissed, or basically lied about. So the point is that this is what's happening for us. And this is the Chiron, this is the Uranus, this is the Jupiter and Scorpio. This is all of this that's happening. But we have this powerful dynamic from Juno and Athena, who are powerful goddesses that are showing us, or they're here as helpers. Athena informed all of the heroes of the Odyssey. She came to Odysseus when he was left stranded, when all his men were drowned at sea because of their foolishness, and he was again thrown up on this island. He was almost home. And she comes to him and she tells him what he needs to know. And she comes to Penelope, his wife, and says, he's coming home. He will be here. When she's in the throes of all these suitors have been hanging out in her palace for 10 years, just consuming all their food and whatever, and trying to have her as their wife, because they're telling her that he's never coming back, and his son as well, who went out to search for him. So she's on our North Node. She's there to inform us. That North Node is that magical moving sidewalk. It's that facilitated point that will carry us forward. She's standing there with her flashlight. She's sending us Morse code signals. She's signaling us that this is the opening. This is where to go. Listen to me. I have something to tell you. I have a story to tell. I have some news for you. And Juno is our fidelity, and it's our contracts, it's our agreements with others. And how many of us are see situations in our life where somebody who we're close to, we're renegotiating that contract, we're renegotiating our agreements, or there's been infidelity, or the contract has been broken, or the agreements that we've made have been broken. So these are really deep underlying dynamics that are really encouraging us to take a different look at what's going on. We're being forced to re-examine this Mars in Aquarius retrograde. We're being forced to re-examine the choices that we've made, the behavior that we've made, the beliefs that we have. And to learn to roll with the punches, and to accept the fact that what's unfolding is good. It's just difficult at the moment, and we don't really know where it's going. But we have to trust that there is something out there that we're moving towards, and that it is what we have collectively intended. It's what we've individually dreamed, and just to allow it to surrender. This is this Venus opposite Neptune that we've got going on here, it's conjunction to Ceres. We're experiencing loss. We're experiencing a personal loss, whether it's who we thought our country is, what we counted on in terms of our own freedom, where our security was. All of these things that we just took for granted, that Pluto and Capricorn has basically washed out to sea, are still there. We haven't lost them. They're just how do I say this? They're just they've been swept aside. But we're just dealing with a cycle in time. This is just the wheel of fortune turning. And we're at a very difficult point where we're being forced to examine what's real, what's true, what's necessary, and also being forced to redream and reinvent ourselves as a result, because it's we've had it easy. We've really, there's been a lot of complacency and a lot of just people not having to pay attention, people not really, when if we're well, if we have our health, we go on. We think we're healthy anyway. We eat the way we want to eat, but then we go to the doctor. We have this pain or something or some discomfort. We go to the doctor and we get this news, that we need to change. We need to do something different. That we can't go on the way that we're going, that we've masked the symptoms, we've masked the discomfort, but that doesn't mean that the discomfort or the symptoms are going to go away. So we have to work with it. We have to see what these symptoms are, and we have to recognize what it is trying to show us and what we individually and collectively can do about it. Leo and Aquarius, because we are part of the collective, but each one of us is a cog in that wheel, and each one of us has to keep turning. We have to keep that gear moving and engage with others. And it's what we're doing here. Basically, do our work and be part of community, whatever that community is. If you're able, to go out and march, if you can make contributions to do whatever we can to just participate in this world, because the world is experiencing what it is because of the lack of that participation. We needed this Aquarian Leo energy. We needed it. It had to happen because it's time. Everything unfolds exactly as it should. Saturn in this chart is also very active. Obviously, it's the rule. We know that it's the ruler of Pluto, the sponsor of Pluto, and here it is. Making trines to Uranus, trines to Juno. So it's supporting. We're getting a lot of support from Saturn and Capricorn, and we also have to remember that Saturn is also the traditional ruler of Aquarius, which is the it's also the ruler of the South Node. So we've got this solidity. What we can focus on are the remedies, and we've looked at we've looked at the disease, we've looked at the symptoms, but what do we do here? So there's a few takeaways. First of all, we need to listen to our heart. We need to trust our heart because it's the most intelligent organ in our body, and also our gut, which the moon. We have an emotional inner guidance system, and we need to pay attention to it. It's trying to tell us something, and we need to listen. We need to take some time out every day If you can meditate, if you can find that stillness, to go there. If you can't, go out in nature, because nature is an amazing therapeutic experience. The negative ions that are out in the forest are just phenomenal. There's just something about being there which is just so healing and so amazingly gratifying, that it's such a simple thing to do. And even if you don't live anywhere near a mountain or a forest, there was a park. Find some little corner of nature. Build a garden in your backyard and go in your whatever. But connect to nature. It's really important. With all this fixed energy, we need flexibility. We need to soften our stance. Something that's really hard is what breaks. Something that can bend, can resist tremendous force. So we have to be the piece of bamboo, not the piece of oak. We have to be able to bend and be flexible and be able to go with the punches, and recognize that not everything's going to go the way that we expect it to. We put our intentions out there. Most of us have intentions. We set our intentions, but we have to let go of them, and because the universe is going to fulfill those intentions in its own way. We can't tell the universe how to deliver it. And right now, we don't like the way the universe is delivering our intentions. But trust me, I truly believe, and this is my Jupiter, that what we've intended is unfolding. We just don't like the way it's unfolding. Trust your intuition. We all have intuition. Intuition is not something that's gifted to just a few people. We can develop our intuition. There are actual practical methodology to developing your intuition, but mostly it begins with recognizing that you have it. And it happens to all of us. And the more that we listen to our intuition, when we get those hits, the stronger our faith in it becomes, and the stronger that intuition becomes, and the more often it will show up for us. We have to develop it. It's there. We need to work with it. Again, it's a proactive thing. We have to work with it. Gut instinct, trust your gut. I said that already. Pay attention to dreams and anything that pops up out of left field. The dreams are coming from Neptune. The left field is coming from Uranus and Athena. Pay attention to what you get, because there's a meaning to it. It means something. Don't just dismiss it, especially something that just shows up out of left field but of its own. Don't give it some space. And what's the emotional turbulence you might be feeling inside of yourself? What are you aware of inside? How are you responding to it? Again, I think, anything that we're feeling short of, going to the doctor and telling us that we're going to die in 2 days, go out in nature, go take a hike, take a bike ride, whatever, go and just become part of something that's much bigger than yourself. And most importantly, these eclipses and this lunar axis at the moment is telling us is that we need to become a working part of community. We need to be part of community and to work towards a common goal, a collective goal, in any way that we can. To find some way to contribute to the world around us, to the community that we live in, to the block that we live on, to the neighborhood that we're part of. You see trash in the street, pick it up. If you walk your dog, don't leave your poop around. There's so many little basic things that we can do to just make our lives better. And it begins with us, and it begins with where we live, on the street where we live, in the town where we live, in the country where we live, to just be part of it. And it's the 100th monkey. Things will begin to change. That's what I got for you guys. So I will entertain any feedback, questions. Anybody have anything that they would like to add or say, or something that wasn't clear? Don't be shy.
Yeah.
I had a question, and I'm sure I probably have missed it. Can you address since Uranus is the ruler of the moon and the moon, Mars, and South Node, with it being square the nodal axis?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is there.
The
What-
Uranus being square the nodal
Okay,
axis, especially as the ruler of the South Node and the
Okay.
moon and Mars.
Well, clearly, it's putting pressure on both sun and moon. It's putting pressure on. It's really the dynamic interaction between Mars and Aquarius retrograde and Uranus is enormous. I'm trying to think of the word. It's nuclear. I mean, it's very, very, very powerful. And it's shifting, the core dynamics, the core of the way that our society is functioning. At the moment, it seems to be shifting in a negative way, but that's because we've got Pluto here tearing things down. I think what Uranus is doing mostly, Wanda, is that it's waking us up. Uranus, the words for Uranus are disrupt and interrupt. It's interrupting us. It's disrupting us, and those are difficult dynamics because we don't like to be interrupted or disrupted. We want to just keep going along the way we're going because it's familiar and we think it's safe because so far so good. But obviously it's not because so far it hasn't been so good. So Uranus is disrupting our world, and in many cases it's disrupting our personal life. And interrupting our personal life to make us see something that we haven't been seeing, to wake us up to something that's probably right in front of our faces, but we've been ignoring because we've been distracted. Personally, I think that the politics are a distraction, Wanda. I think that we are being distracted. I think that there has been an agenda for quite some time, and we could spend another hour talking about this. In my case, I believe it goes back to the 1920s or farther. But we have been distracted for a very long period of time. Our attention has been taken away from what's really important because I believe that there's stuff going on behind the scenes that it does not want to be seen. And I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory kind of stuff, but everything is not as we think it is. Everything is not as it seems, especially with this Neptune and Pisces retrograde. I think that there are things that will come out that have happened, and I'll just name some dates: 1961, 1963, 2001. We've had a series of events in this country which have been swept under the rug and kind of explained the way that Trump explained his meeting in Helsinki. It's just total lies. So, at some point in time, it's my belief that any one of these events, the truth of it coming out, is a game changer globally. But we're obviously not ready for that. But this is what's happening. It's an awakening, and I don't know about you, but I like to be woken up gently. Okay, I get woken up every morning with a little, kind of nudge. You're going to get up and make the coffee now. And that's the way I like to wake up. I don't like to, somebody just throw the covers off, throw open the windows in the middle of winter and say, "Hey, it's time to get up." So, but that's what's happening. We're being awakened, rudely in a way. There's a rudeness to it. Our world has become ruder and harsher and more difficult, and it's really what we have to contend with. But there's layers and layers of reality here that are unfolding, and unfortunately, we're only seeing the top layers.
I have a question, Daniel.
Yes, Tashi.
In consideration of Uranus and that you were just speaking of, and the harshness and the awakenings that are challenged and can be difficult for us, could this possibly be a sign for us to come back into what is more of our value, our heart?
Absolutely.
and the love, and how we can find remedy for that within ourselves, and start to share a trueness in our lives, and that which we would like to cultivate.
Without question, yes, you've nailed it. And I think that this is the meaning of the current transit of Neptune through Pisces. We are being taken to a place where we need to mine that compassion and forgiveness and self-love and love for others. It's being demanded of us, but we have the resources to do it. Neptune and Pisces is giving us that resource. We have it. We have that depth, and we just had that the beautiful grand trine with Venus and Jupiter. Jupiter's still trining Neptune. Bringing that powerful, expansive, compassionate, loving energy back into the world. Yes, this is what is happening. But everybody has to. Venus is opposite Neptune right now. So what that tells me is that what we need to do is to learn to love ourselves, because we can't love anybody else until we love ourselves. And that's the hardest, journey of all in many cases, because it comes back to the moon with its craters. We're always stepping in our own craters. We're always, tripping over ourselves one way or another very often. And so we blame ourselves, and we hold ourselves, as an example of, what not to do. And it's a very Virgo, very Virgo dynamic. I have Virgo rising. I can write a book about Virgo. Maybe one of these days I will. Where it's just, we think there's just something wrong with us. And if there's something wrong with us, there can't be anything right with anything else in the world. It just works that way. So yes, you're right. We have to find that understanding.
Hi, Daniel. Now it's me.
Okay.
I love your work, Daniel. Thank you so much. So I don't know. Do you remember the Hubers, the European astrologers, the Hubers?
Kind of. Yeah. Fill me in.
Well, they made learning triangles out of things. So here we have this midheaven Saturn, and then it's 30 degrees opening with Mars and the Moon and the South Node, and then Chiron is also in this same triangulation. I don't even know how many there are here. 1, 2, 3. So then there's Chiron at 2, then there's Uranus at 2, and then there's the Sun and the North Node at 4 and 5. So we have quite a lot of energy between this chord of planets that they would call a learning triangle. So I thought I'd ask you, what do you think we're learning?
What are we learning? We are learning that maybe what we know isn't so. We're learning that we need to relearn, and I kind of touched on this. I think it's a Gemini Jupiter. It's a Gemini Sagittarian thing. We name things. We have language. It's Gemini, third house. The minute I hold this up. The minute I name this, I'm finished with any further understanding of it. If I haven't named it, it's wide open. Okay, I'm still learning about it. The minute we put a name on it, the minute that's it. It's finalized. And to a great degree, all of us, it's our nature to basically hold on to that structured, familiar understanding we have of our world, our reality, whether it's a person or it's ourselves or it's a set of circumstances. We have it pigeonholed in some way. And once we do that, it's difficult to move out of that space. That's what Uranus does. Uranus comes along and it shakes it up so that we recognize there's more to it than we were seeing, or more to it than we were understanding. And we re-identify it and we rename it. And in that process, we learn. We learn more about it. But the minute we name it, we're finished. We can no longer learn anything new about it. And we're to a great degree, that's where we are in our world. We think we're so developed, and I think it's our country. We reach this, this point where we're the pinnacle on the planet. Well, guess what? Maybe we're not. Go see what's his name's last movie? Can't think of his name now. I'm terrible with names. Oh Jesus, it'll come to me. But where he goes to other countries and he sees the vacations they take and the pensions they earn and
Michael Moore.
Thank you. We're just not there, but we have in our head that somehow we are. Okay, and actually, this is what Donald Trump is trying to work with, but he isn't doing it. So, yes, I like that. I think that that's a great paradigm because we're here to learn. Earth is a soul school. We're here to learn.
Thanks.
Great question. Anyone else?
Daniel, I had just typed in the chat, and hopefully you can hear me. I've got a plane going overhead. It seems like with Neptune involved in all of this, it just really feels like that it has been we always associate Neptune with, chaos and confusion and delusion, but it really seems like it's been as it's, traveled through Pisces up to this point, that it's been the ultimate truth,
right.
Right. With everything that we've, that people have thought, oh no, that couldn't happen, when you've had others, saying, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And especially with the advent of, smartphones and cameras and things like that, now that it's on film, kind of hard to deny that, that it's happening. And that's what seems like, Neptune has been that, that crystal clarity, crystal clear. It's in your face. It's here. You see it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's all the stuff that we've, been denying over, gosh, hundreds of years.
Well, I think that's great. That's really true. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on, there wasn't time, and you can go on my YouTube channel. And actually, I don't know if I did the talk here. I did a talk on awakening global community about the Neptune Uranus semi-square, which there are 5 of them, and it's going to continue into 2019. Neptune's the zeitgeist. It's the media. It's the information universe that we live in, and the movies and the books and all of the media that we're exposed to. And the semi-square to Uranus, I traced all the way back to 4th century BC. When they were conjunct, it's a global awakening. It's a community awakening on the planet. But it's a semi-square. It's difficult for us all to come together as a single community on this planet. There's such diversity, but it's really what's unfolding, and it relates to the internet. The internet has had a great, look at us. Here we are. We're all over the world in different time zones. And this is the way it has been really since the late, the 1980s, 70s and 80s. It's remarkable that cyberspace has become, it's not just a virtual community anymore. We are a real, community in time and space. So it's what's happening to our world. And as we expand, we are being exposed to all these other influences and beliefs and ideas. And it's revolutionary. It's absolutely changing who we are, because we're realizing that who we think we are, that there's more to us. That we're not just who we think we are. There's a much greater potentials to us individually and collectively, and we're just beginning, again, from my perspective, to come to that liminal space where it's beginning to spread, where there's this geometric progression of understanding that's beginning to spread across the planet. and it's going to take some time. I think we're going to see this is what the 2020s are going to look like. We're going to see this, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be a clear path to it, or that it's going to be a straight shot either. It's not. It's still a long and winding road, but what's happening is we're recognizing that there's something bigger than ourselves, and this is huge. This is really huge. And as that sinks in and more people begin to become aware that what affects you affects me, and it doesn't matter if you're in Australia or the UK or Russia, we're all going to feel the impact of it. We're all in this together. I have a friend who likes to say that there's only one of us on the planet. And if you think about that, that holds a tremendous truth, that there really is just one of us here. We are a single organism. We just don't know it. We're a colony of ants that just don't get along with each other, and it's changing. It's got to change.
This has been just absolutely just fabulous.
So, Linda?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Any other questions from the audience? Comments? Daniel,
That's great, Daniel. I completely agree with everything that you've said.
Thank you, Robin.
Daniel, I noticed that you can't have more than one final dispositor, right? But the dispositorship of Saturn in Capricorn, Neptune in Pisces, Sun in Leo. Mm-hmm. Any comments on that? Do you think that would make them stronger?
Oh, no question. A planet in its own sign is like doubled. It's doubled up, doubled down.
What about that combination, though? Saturn, Neptune, Sun.
Well, let's look at that. The sun is how we're self-actualizing. It's how we're taking that life force internally within ourselves and expressing it as a human, as a person. It's our persona. We're actually, that's the juice that runs through us. Saturn represents it's the point of evolution. It's gravity. So it's a very grounding combination where we actually are making it real. There's an ability to take that raw energy and turn it into something meaningful. And meaningful would be a Neptune word, but to turn it into something that's real and substantial. And it's also this connection. The sun trying. The sun's not aspecting Neptune, but there is again, it's this awareness of something greater than ourselves, and it's the soul angst to want to reconnect to it, even if the ego is not aware of that angst. We all have that desire to reconnect, and basically, Saturn is the involution. We could look at Neptune as the return, the reconnection, and as the sun perhaps as the fulcrum between the two, where we're actually turning that corner ultimately.
Thanks, Daniel. Yes, I'm just looking at the actual chart for July 27th, not the whole sign houses chart, but the actual chart has Sag ascendant. I'd like to share my screen.
Please.
Yeah, if you could stop your share and I'll put this up. I noticed that Venus is on the midheaven, and I'm interested in angularity at the moment, just looking into that and the meaning of angularity. Neptune is kind of close to the IC, but that Venus stands out for me. Any ideas on that?
Well, I look at the IC and the MC as basically where we stand in the world. The IC is our foundation, and the MC is basically where we are, where we stand. It's our, what's the word I'm looking for? It's our projection. It's our physical stance in the world. Venus and Neptune are related to each other. We know that Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. We're talking about meaning. We're talking about, where do we find the real meaning in our lives? And, not coincidentally, it's Gemini and Sagittarius's house. It's that search for truth, which is, and Sagittarius is also a search for a journey, towards meaning. So I think that we're recognizing that what we have invested in terms of where the meaning is in our lives and what's really important and where our priorities are, and really what is holding us together, which I think is a Neptune, where we're all basically in that same, that connection that we all have to each other and to Source itself, is that recognition that we're not here, we're not alone, we're not separate, we're not singular. It's not just about me, it's about us. And it's not just about what I need, it's about what we all need. That my own needs, yes, I have to take care of my own survival, but I cannot do that at the expense of somebody else's survival. And I think this is what we're learning. Maybe it's what Tashi, one things Tashi has brought up, that this is a learning experience, that we have to have broader perspectives, and we have to have a greater awareness of what is outside of just, our own, the four walls of our house, or, our own little world, that we can't wait until the crisis comes home to us. The guy next door lost his job. The person on the other side found out that they have cancer. The other person, has lost a child. Didn't come home from some battle somewhere. These are the things that are going on. But until it happens to us, it's a Pluto Scorpio thing. Until we have a direct emotional experience of it, we don't know it. I think that this Pisces energy is clearly opening us up to this more collective emotional experience, in probably a more gentle way than Pluto would do it. But it's happening on both levels, obviously. But it's finding the real meaning. We're looking for the new meaning in our lives, because where we have found meaning up till now is just not working anymore. There's a loss. I think that's the series up there too, and I see series. It's a loss. We've lost something. It's gone underground. It's gone into the underworld. We don't have it anymore.
That's interesting. I'm also noticing that the nodes of Neptune are conjunct this eclipse by 5 degrees. So the south node of Neptune in Aquarius, 10 degrees, and the north node of Neptune in Leo. I'm not sure if it's exactly 10 degrees at the moment, but it's around there. It's around that degree. I would definitely see that as quite pertinent.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And we also know that the eclipse last week, that Pluto was on its own nodes, which is this tremendous undercurrent of patriarchy and matriarchy and the power struggles and what's going on in our world, that we're turning a huge corner. It's enormous. We're rounding a difficult transition, globally, and but I don't know if you study the cycle of the yugas. According to in some circles, we've actually just reached the bottom of the cycle of the yugas, and to get back to Satya Yuga, which is 24,000 years ago. So we're turning a corner, and we're coming into new territory. It's like coming into going someplace, and we don't really have we have a roadmap. Our roadmap is the astrology, but again, it's it's interpretive. It's not going to show us the exact distance from Brisbane to San Francisco. It's it's a little bit more abstract than that.
Thanks, Daniel. So the lunar eclipse on 16 July 2000 was at 24 Cancer Capricorn. And that's when Wanda moved house. Exactly, right, Wanda?
Yes, on that day.
I can't see any, there's no kind of aspect or anything. I mean, can you see anything here, Wanda?
The only thing would be the inconjunct to Venus.
Yeah.
Which is the ruler of, the North Node, and of course square the nodes. Yeah, that's the only connection that I see.
So Daniel, when an eclipse takes place in a house that has no planets, like Wanda here, like in the 5th and the 11th, do you think it's still active, or does it have to hit planets?
I think that it's active in that space in her life, and that sphere of her life. So we were 24 Capricorn. That's an inconjunct to Jupiter. Jupiter's the ruler of that 4th house. Okay, so that's going to create some tension. That's going to create a course change for sure.
Yeah, good spotting that. Yes, good.
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting to even look at it, because that's what I've always heard, that if it's not hitting directly, conjuncting that degree and sign in your chart, then it's not going to have that much of an effect on you. And I'm like, because this is not just, not just say a normal move. This is a house that I purchased.
Jupiter
on my own.
Jupiter is applying to Vesta as well. And actually, I'm not sure the synodic rate of Vesta, but I think Jupiter moves faster. I think it's applying to Vesta. Vesta is our home. Vesta is the hearth. Vesta had no temple. Actually, the Greek word for hearth is Vesta. She was the center of the home. She was the center of the community. And in Vesta's shadow was homelessness. So Jupiter conjunct Vesta also is about home. And with that conjunction, I would suggest that it was a home change. You were responding to a sense of needing to change your home, to find a new hearth, a new center within yourself.
That's brilliant, Daniel. Vesta also is faster moving than Jupiter, so that's a new phase conjunction, which signifies something new in the family. And it can be the home, of course, because it's in Cancer.
It's in Cancer. Right.
So, Wanda, I think we've found some few reasons here.
Yeah. And I definitely thank you for that.
Daniel has. He did all the hard work. Excellent, Daniel. So any final questions? Daniel, would any final comments that you'd like to make on this eclipse?
Yes, breathe, go at nature, love yourself, love those around you, and just be free.
And enjoy it. Beautiful. Excellent. So would you all please thank Daniel Fiverson, everyone. Daniel, thank you. Catch you next time.
Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
Oh,
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Daniel.
so
Come back soon.
much. Brilliant.
Thanks a lot.